Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we are back to Hearthstone. So today we need to try to get Mage and Hunter victories. If we get some extra time, we need to play 4 Shaman cards and finish that quest out. And then if we get some extra time, we can try and play the Warrior, I guess, and see if we can get some more victories that way. We're just struggling to get victories. Right now, playing on casual, not trying to get ranked or anything. I just want victories, and because I traded out all the daily quests to get the most amount of gold, I forced myself into spending a lot of extra time today playing Hearthstone. It hasn't proven itself to be a terrible idea because, frankly, there's quite a lot of news. In now what has been 2 hours of gameplay, I've managed to cover half of the news, and I'm only up to 2 hours of gameplay because I accidentally went an hour in the first episode recording. I stupidly set my timer to 25 hours instead of 25 minutes. I need to see if I can have a timer that's just always set here. Let's see, I don't know if I can really win here. If I put this here... Of each friendly minion in your hand. Interesting. All this deck that I have right here is built around this battle cry, which probably means it's not the greatest deck that will actually win. Battle cry isn't very successful. I was watching Total Biscuit's co-optional podcast, and they were talking about how the meta in this game, and I don't pay a lot of attention to any of that, but they were saying that the meta in this game is so broken that like there's one deck that wins 63% of the time, and you just play that same deck over and over again. And there's like a couple others that make it. Total Biscuit hasn't played Hearthstone in 6 months, he says, and I kind of envy him for it, honestly.
Excuse me, you are on fire.
But we'll see if that lasts. The main issue is I would leave Hearthstone if I could find something that got me more views and worked, and people really wanted me to do that. Alright, we got a nice victory here. Unfortunately, Mage is already at level 60, so the only thing that I can get from getting more victories on Mage is if I get 500 victories, I'll get the gold bordered version of the Mage, which I'm probably 150 victories away from that.
Jaina versus Anduin.
The light shall bring victory.
But yeah, almost like I don't even know how I could pivot like that. I would have to get a bunch of people coming on to the live streams of Hearthstone and say, why don't you play this game instead? And if it really looked like the audience was going that way, which I haven't seen anybody actually go anyway, ideally I would want to play some kind of get in on the beta floor of some new card game, and
is someone injured?
And then that new card game beat Blizzard at its own game, which it seems highly unlikely it will. So I don't think that's going to happen, and it would be throwing all of the stuff I've done in this game out the window. So that's a very hard decision to make. I just wish Blizzard would fix Hearthstone, honestly. Make it a better game. Moving on to news, THQ Nordic soon probably to be just changing its name to THQ because they are trying to be the new THQ. Has acquired the rights to Rad Rogers, which is this Kickstarter game that's based on 90s platformers. So Commander Keen, Jazz Jackrabbit. There were several games that came out that worked with the gamepad. There was this joystick you could play in the computers, and it's kind of like the Xbox 360 before the Xbox 360 controller, which is to say, it doesn't look anything like that. It looked like a rounded version of the Super NES controller. It had 4 buttons. I don't think it had any shoulder buttons or anything like that. Let's do this. And then let's do this. And then smash that. And there was a name of a company. It wasn't just called the Gamepad. It may have been called the Gravis Gamepad or something like that. And it had a nice long controller. The connectors on it were the joystick connector, which was this really, really big plug compared to like a USB, even a standard USB connector. It was way, way bigger than that because it was parallel connections. So there was a wire and a pin in it for every single button in the game. Or actually, there was a pin for every single button that the interface could even use, which is still probably less than what an Xbox 360 controller uses. But at the time, it was definitely a thing to behold, and I liked it very much as a controller. And I could see some nostalgia there for this new IP, which they're developing a console version, Rad Rogers. Unfortunately, Commander Keen, Jazz Jackrabbit, not great games. Not really. They died for a reason more than most games of their day and age. It's not like point-and-click adventure games, in my head, at least. There's just kind of... I have a little bit of a nostalgia for it, but I could buy Commander Keen, and I may already own Commander Keen, but I don't think I'd ever go back and play it. Because it was a difficult game that deal 1 damage to all minions. Let's try this.
No.
So yeah, if they made a 2D side-scrolling platformer, what you're talking about is something like Super Mario Brothers, and if you can do it really well, maybe. But Super Mario Run tried to do it, and they didn't do it really well, and that was from Nintendo themselves. So like, I just don't believe that they could actually succeed there. Like, if it does succeed, that'll be amazing. That would be really, really amazing. And if we had this new IP for Rad Rogers, that would be great. But I'm not sure very many people would even want to play it, even if it was the perfect, best game ever that you could imagine. If it's 2D, 3D, newer players that are used to 3D environments aren't going to want to play it. When you compare it to something like Mirror's Edge, which is kind of a 3D platformer, you're not going to have as many things. Those style games were built around a lot of of the idea that, well, they were built around collectibles and health management and killing enemies that were often difficult. I remember Commander Keen in particular was an extremely difficult game. What does this do?
I wonder.
Let's just play this and this.
I'm ready.
So this guy can't attack. That's basically what we have. Speaking of old games, Konami is doing free DLC for Bomberman R, which is on the Switch. But I'm not sure the free DLC fixes anything there, because that game still has problems. Last I checked. And as long as that game still has problems, I don't think just giving DLC on something that doesn't run smoothly fixes those problems.
No friend. Lost free.
I'm ready.
There we go. Moving on, like, there's really nothing else to say about Konami. Although Konami seems to be struggling in two different places. They're getting sued by a soccer player for using his likeness, or they made a bad version of Bomberman R. They came out with the arcade game Bomber Girl instead of focusing on making Bomberman R a good game. There we go. So yeah, Konami's just not doing what they should do, and that's not new for Konami.
You have been.
Speaking of not doing what you probably should do, Harmonix is laying off 17 people in one weekend, or they laid off 17 people in one weekend in the name of restructuring, which frankly, losing your talent and restructuring is not gonna solve anything. This clearly screams that the people who own stock in Harmonix are trying to shutter the company to the point where there's just going to be the people sitting on the board who own the last stock, and maybe a small team, if not one person, just in charge of selling Harmonix's properties that they've already made, but not invest in any new creations. So, like a non-contributing body to the video game industry. That's what it means when you're laying people off for restructuring. It's not like you're laying 17 people off to then hire 17 newer people or 34 newer people that have new ideas and will take half the pay. That's not what it means. And apparently at least 24 people have already been laid off this year, so don't be surprised if by this time, by the end of the year, you hear that Harmonix is completely shut down and bankrupt and getting split up and sold for its assets, because that company has been turned into a rotting carcass and it's now just being sold for parts, and that's what they're doing. For some good news, Brenda R. Ramino, who is apparently, I think, a British video game designer writer, is going to receive a special award from BAFTA, which I think BAFTA is the British Arts Foundation or something like that, for technical achievement or something. I don't know.
Happy New Year.
I assume that that's kind of what that is. So it's always nice to see that somebody in the video game industry gets some recognition, because so often they don't, and they're overworked. Brenda, or though she's worked on 47 games, such as Ghost Recon series and the Dungeons and Dragons series, but you would think that some of the other companies and other people would be more deserving of awards, but maybe there aren't that many British video game companies, so that might very well be the reason, is that this was the only British person they could give a special award to, because all the others are in the United States or somewhere else. What does this one do? Death rattle, give a random character in your hand. Let's just keep on doing this. So good for her. I'm not saying she doesn't deserve it or anything like that. I'm just saying that when you start to think about it, the people who wrote like the story for Portal 2, I can't name those people, even though I kind of know who they are because I've covered a story on them. I can't name him. I don't remember his name. I know he left Valve, and that left me to speculate that Valve wasn't making any more games, which still seems to be the case. But yeah, maybe the authors of the Uncharted series deserve something. Maybe not. Maybe the Last of Us people deserve something. Probably, I would say, on that count. Let's see. If you have a mech.
What to do? What to do? You are shivering.
Draw. Job's done.
So, yeah. I kind of wish there were more awards, but frankly, they don't care about the awards too much in the video game industry anyways. So, who do we got today? Finally got somebody. Typical Isonetic? Ionetic. Isonetic.
What to do?
That's an interesting word. I've never heard that before as a word at all. Somebody in the chat finally saying hi, which thank goodness for anybody who says anything in the chat. Even 1 or 2 comments in the chat starts to get a live stream promoted. It really does. So I've renewed myself to responding in live chat, definitely, either through actual typing, or if it's a long question that requires a long response, and I'll probably turn it into a long response anyways, then I'll talk about it. But also, even when I get spam bots that just say great video on my channel, like, I know that more than likely it is just some spam bot saying great video. I still say thanks. I still approve it. As long as it's not got a link or saying something offensive or something, I'll just approve it, even though I know it's a spam bot, and say, okay, fine. If you want to spam my videos and say great video, fine. I don't care. If YouTube doesn't care, I don't care. If it was saying your video sucks and it was a spam bot and it was the exact same phrasing and exact same words every time, I probably would block them then, because, but I actually probably wouldn't, come to think of it. Any news is good news as far as comments. So if some spam bot just wanted to insult me, that'd be fine too, I guess. Let's see. Can I read what I wrote here as the news? Yeah, that's
Not
actually
quite what
not
was planned.
anything there, so that wasn't online. Moving on to the next news. I have all these things that let my secrets be played for free, and I don't have any secrets in this deck because it's all based around just battle cries. It doesn't matter what the battle cry actually does. Of course, maybe this random spell. Spend all your mana, do that much damage to a minion. Sure, why not? Moving on, the
Not quite what was
Games Radar and IGN on a separate note are irritating me right now, but Games Radar got it so wrong that I'm gonna have to stop reading and watching them. As like factually, this is a very subjective opinion, but I feel like the common belief is so solid or so close to what my belief is on this that basically it's like if you went up to somebody and the first word out of their mouth was something that you were so disagreed with. If they said the sky is green and you go the sky is blue, you turn around and walk away, and that's what I have to do here. And what has got me to quit Games Radar is not even anything about video games. They ranked all the Hayao Miyazaki movies, and from best to worst. And they put My Neighbor Totoro in 5th. Now, if you ask most Japanese people, My Neighbor Totoro, sorry I mispronounced it the first time, would almost certainly be number 1. But I could see you can maybe make an argument for a younger Japanese person saying maybe Ponyo or one of the newer Miyazaki movies beating out Totoro and putting it in 2nd. Maybe you can even make an argument that you could put Totoro in 3rd if you really loved it. But to put it at 5th, to say 4 other Miyazaki movies are better than Totoro, you are just out there. You are just making up. It's their opinion, and I have no reason to doubt that they really believe what they said. Although I slightly think it might just be clickbait, and that they are putting them in the wrong order or just randomly picking things. But and it's not like Hayao Miyazaki's movies are out of order. Like Totoro is really great, and then Howl's Moving Castle, for example, is really bad. If they're all pretty good, maybe you can make an argument for 1 or 2 of them being not the greatest ever. But let's see if we play this. Get a secret always. But yeah, I just can't. I can't trust their opinion. Honestly, if somebody tells me the sky is green, I can't trust them when they tell me the water is purple. It's way too off. Way too off. And I imagine it might have just been clickbait too. So Games Radar is going bye-bye. And IGN is weird in itself because I basically have figured out now and gone backwards in some weird way. So the people at Kinda Funny Games, who I don't listen to because I don't think they're very funny or very good at covering it, were the people basically that were doing the podcast on IGN. And so it's this backwards. So I'm going from the newer podcast that had everybody leave that to this backwards group of people that are probably even worse than Kind of Funny Games. there. And there's apparently some Twitter war between one of the guy that was on the guy that left Kinda Funny Games, and Max Scoville, the guy who's in charge of IGN. And then IGN is getting the newest, getting game reviews before anybody else, which tells me that they are heavy with they're heavy inside the industry. And frankly, I probably, with the smallest amount of research, would have figured that out anyways. It's probably incredibly obvious that IGN is super in with the industry. I think I've heard it said that IGN never gives anything less than an 8 on any game. So there's probably no good reason to watch them if they're just heavily biased and they're just gonna to give bad information. A bad news source is not needed in my life. I need good news sources that are objective and accurate and in line with my own personality. And that's the problem with the Hayao Miyazaki orders, is if they're gonna tell me that a video game, a movie that is almost universally loved, is not as good as everybody else thinks, then their opinion on video games is terrible. It's just not in line with normal people, and it's way too far out of line.
Dead or alive.
So they kind of nullified their opinion by giving a terrible opinion. Moving on, Jackbox Party Pack 3 is going to come out for the Switch, which is cool. I mean, lots of people like to play that. It's coming out on April 15. Fallout Shelter has come to Steam, but it's still incredibly slow, so I don't see any reason why I would want to play it. I played it for a little bit, and it does have Steam achievements, so if you've done everything in Fallout Shelter and you wanted to do it again, now that you don't have to use the Blizzard, it wasn't the Blizzard launcher, it was the Bethesda launcher, that's great. I assume this is probably them just making the argument that nobody is going to use the Bethesda launcher, which is great news. I hope they just say we're not going to support that very much anymore, and we're going to be done with it, because that's exactly what I don't need in my life, is a launcher owned by one company to launch 5 games. But Fallout Shelter, even with its updates, still has problems. And so, it's still not the greatest game, and then ideally I think you still would want to play it on the cell phone. Alright, so it's been another 30 minutes or thereabout. Since if you're watching it live, we've still got some news to cover, and we're going to have to do one more recording. But if you're watching this in the future as a recording episode number, this is it. So as always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on basically any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.